Tell me to appeal my unfair grade? You got it. Many years ago, I was a student studying computer science in the Midwest while most of my professors were okay. There was one that was notorious. Let's call him Dr. J. Dr. J was an old, effete, lazy professor with a thick Southwest Asian accent whom had been teaching for the better part of 30 years, and had fully embraced the typical semi-retired lifestyle of the tenured professor. Showing up to office hours? Maybe. Showing up to help in a lab? Once. The whole semester. I estimated out of the 3.5 hours per week of lecture time. He was actually in the classroom for maybe half of it, and the time that he did spend in the classroom was a complete waste. He would just pass out packets at the beginning of class that contained numerous diagrams and handwritten notes that were indecipherable, and meander around the class pointing at various parts to groups of people working on them and mumble incoherently about how to solve it. I think I never understood a word he said. He never followed his course syllabus or even answered emails. For anyone who's taken an engineering course, especially an upper-level one, this won't sound too crazy. But here's the kicker. He would fail regularly. Half the class. For a required upper-level computer architecture course. This is exceptionally rare and completely unfair for a class at this level. Especially at a state school that isn't a research uni. Typically, the interlopers have been weeded out by junior year. So while the rest of the classes are by no means a cakewalk, if you put forth an honest effort to learn the material, you should be able to pass the class with flying colors. Not so with Dr. J. Failing a class at the level of this course could be devastating to your degree path since it was a required course. Dr. J was the only one to teach it, and it was only taught in fall. But Dr. J couldn't be bothered, despite the class average for his exams being something like 2/15. Not that scores mattered because you could get the same score as someone on all the assignments in exams. But you'd failed the class for who the fuck knows why. Here's the malicious compliance. Lo and behold, I'm one of the 16 out of 31 students in the class that he failed that semester. And I failed having gotten very similar scores to a couple other students. But they passed. I went to Dr. J's office after the scores had been applied to our transcripts online to discuss the matter. Dr. J wouldn't have any of it. Doesn't matter that I had similar scores to other students that had passed. There's many ways I grade my students and you failed. If you don't like it, you're free to appeal the grade, but you won't get it. The fact that the little shit was sitting there in his chair trying to bullshit me pissed me off so damn much I decided right then and there to fuck his shit up. My school has a very well laid out and reasonable grade appeal policy, with many avenues toward getting the appeal approved. I knew that through some of the snide jokes they made. My other professors did not take kindly to Dr. J at all. So it wasn't just the students that strongly disliked him. Well, when you appeal a grade, the other profs in the department are the ones who get to decide whether or not you actually passed. Given certain evidence, it's practically criminal. What he gets away with, were the words of my faculty advisor. Now my original plan was for me to just file an appeal and move on, because I knew I'd get it. But Dr. J had poked the bear and now I was mad. So I reached out to everyone in the class. Very easy since we all were on a Slack channel together. And set a meeting in a conference room in the library. I guess I underestimated how much everyone hated Dr. J because everyone from the class showed up. I laid out my plan. Everyone file a grade appeal. Even if you passed. If it'll help your GPA. At my school, a grade appeal will replace your letter grade with a satisfactory, which means you get credit for the course without a grade that affects your GPA. I had enough appeal forms pre-printed before the meeting so that everyone could fill it out together. It was the happiest I'd ever seen that group of people the entire semester. I think the final count of appeals was something like 22. Everyone whose GPA could be improved with a satisfactory applied for one. You should have seen the look on the department chair's face when we showed up with a stack of appeals. No department in the history of the school had ever had that many appeals, complaints for a single course, let alone for a single professor. I know this because the dean sat us all down and said so. There were so many appeals they had to bring us into the faculty panel in groups of 3 to 4. Not that it mattered. The whole thing was a formality as the die was cast. 2 weeks later we heard the news. Everyone, literally everyone, had gotten their appeal approved. Dr. J was given a formal warning by the uni and had most of his courses taken away and are now taught by other people. He still holds onto the computer architecture course and some freshman intro classes. But from what I've heard, he hasn't failed anyone for a long time. So if you're a lazy prick of a professor, be warned. You might get someone like me for a student who foments an insurrection in your class and turns your job upside down. TL. Professor gave me a bullshit grade. Made me mad. Got the whole class to appeal their grades. All get approved. Professor gets formally reprimanded and most of his classes taken away. No longer fails students arbitrarily. I've never understood when teachers fail half the class like that. Doesn't that make the point that you aren't a very good teacher if you couldn't get half of the class to understand the material? And those teachers who never give A's? Again, aren't you saying you aren't good enough for your students to learn from you? They get so wrapped up in the power trip they lose sight of the fact that they are just proving themselves to be not good at their job. Well, good for you. You forced him off his lazy butt and made him actually work. The student-teacher power dynamic at most universities is so unbelievably lopsided. It's ridiculous to pay that much money but have so little power or control over your own education. I'm a bit confused about your university's appeal policy. It sounds like that policy could easily be abused by anyone who failed a class. Why do they auto-pass anyone who appeals a grade? That's our pro-revenge. This is glorious! Exclamation mark. And so well written it's like a how to MC. Define, foment. Too bad he retired on the job with tenure. I'm guessing he was once a good teacher in order to gain tenure. Well done. That must have been very satisfying. Dr. Jerk? I was in a continuing studies class and the adjunct professor was horrible. The first day in class hands out a bell curve that literally said about 4 people would fail. This was a graduate class, no reason for anyone to fail if they do the work and participate. Well, I found out really quick that if she didn't like you, you would be one of the 4. Well, that was me. I took my coursework and emails that I had with her that showed she had a problem with me and went to the dean. I did not fail that class in the end. She was a horrible professor who was teaching a bunch of professionals and thought her way was the only way. She had no idea who she was messing with. I feel your pain. I was at the state school that was also a large research campus, taking the first intro class for Chem E. Note this as upper division. Essentially each week is taught in one of the other classes you take. For instance, like 1 to 2 weeks on thermodynamics. And later you take a whole class on that topic. So this is supposed to be a high-level summary. Well, this class was graded more like a final for the degree. The exams were brutal and the information in lecture book did not cover what was needed. How did I know? A friend getting ready to graduate had to retake the class. He had received A's or B's in all the other courses. He struggled to eke out a B here, and used his book notes from the other classes to study. I worked so hard for my only D I ever received. Well, 6 months later I got a letter in the mail. The university was giving everyone the option to retroactively drop the course from their transcript. I assume someone must have complained or they saw too many people failed. Everyone had said the class was a weeder for the major. In that 6 months many people, like me, changed majors. Word was they like to limit the number of Chem-S to keep salaries high. After that experience I now believe in weeder classes and informal limits on degrees. Many years ago? Slack has been around less than 10 years. Dude, yes. Never just look out for yourself, make it painful for the bad professor. I had a personality psychology teacher back in UG that was just brutally awful. In the late 1990s. Was still teaching from the same overhead prints he made in 1952. So you could not read them. He taught full on incorrect information, in direct conflict with current science of that field. A field I don't think has a great deal of validity to begin with, but this guy may have biased me permanently. At every test, he used an incorrect test grading template, multiple choice. So every test there were at least 5 to 10 out of 100 questions that were incorrectly graded. But, and here is the kicker, he would change your grade if and only if. Even after it being proved his error. If you went to his office hours and went through each question and justified why you were correct. So folks that did not review the tests item by item, or had work or other issues with making office hours, got screwed. So, a crew of about 10 to 15 of us sat near each other and figured this out pretty quick. This was a class of over 200. Big lecture hall style. And we set up a system where anytime we found these incorrectly graded items, we divided up the justification, put it all in a single document, printed it off, and handed it out to everyone in class within the same period between classes. I have a weird memory. I can usually recall exactly what page in the text an item came from, and we could always win if the text contradicted what he said in class, because he never wanted the chair or dean to find out. He never updated his overheads, let alone put them in PPT, which was common even then. So then the next office hours, we would all go with our cheat sheet and go line by line. Honestly, I think this one test, the second of the year, was the worst, had over 1/3 of the items misgraded. So he had these detailed conversations with about 5 of us before he gave in, and fixed the grades for everyone, not BU correctly regrading of course, but by giving everyone the points for the misguided items. That meant that those that knew the material were getting similar grades to those that did not. But this was such a sucky class. He never did give in and fix the grading on any test moving forward, but each time we rinsed, repeated, and got similar result. All the mis-scored items were given credit for everyone. Do you think he fixed his templates? No. So, guess what happened to all those cheat sheets of what items were mis-scored the next 3 years? I was still around at that institution. And last I heard, those were still passed down class to class for another 10 years before he finally retired. Fucking engineering professors get their fucking rocks off for failing people. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous and shameful that you have chosen educators trying to purposefully fuck over people's futures, just because they're in the power to do so. You're an awesome person for helping out your classmates like that. Thumbs up. don't let me pass? Then we'll pass your classes to another teacher. Sounds like you were the catalyst the school needed to act. I'm honestly surprised the university let that happen if he'd been doing that for a significant period of time. My mom worked as the vice president at my local university, and she said the registrar department that handles course reviews and audits would talk to a professor if too many people are failing a course. It's bad for business for the university if too many students fail a course, let alone an upper year course required for a specific program. I'm glad that lazy professor got what he deserved. Failing that course could drastically mess up someone's career path if they had to wait another semester or school year to graduate, missing out on jobs. Last semester I had a physics lab where the instructor sent out the syllabus at the beginning of the year, with video links for the data, and then fucked off into the night. No emails. No lectures. No response to emails sent. Nothing. The worst part was that the lab manual we had was printed wrong, so all the labs we were supposed to do weren't in there. I had to email my physics instructor from last semester to jump into his class lectures for each lab and ask him to send me PDFs of the correct labs because my instructor was off in Tahiti or something. Complete bullshit, but I passed the class. This does put a smile on my face.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.